Hi, everybody. Will here with this week's interview chair brought to you by Canine Chronicle TV and Pro Plan. This week on the chair is one of my very favorites, and he hates when I call him this, but Dr. Michael Woods. So sit back and relax and listen to Michael for the next hour. Hi, everybody. Will here with this week's interview chair, and this week sitting on the chair is Dr. Michael Woods. How are you, Doctor?
I'm very well, thank you, Will.
I just called you Doctor twice. I'll stop. So things are well. How's the weather down there?
The weather is actually not too bad. Pretty calm day. We've had our first little bit of snow. We had a small blizzard the other day, but other than that, it's been great.
Is that your first snow?
That is our really first snow, yeah.
Wow. We've had snow. We've had like 3 different seasons already this year. It's crazy. So
that's why everyone's moving to Halifax.
Okay. All right, let's get started. Tell the people how you first got involved in our sport of dogs and how old you were.
Well, it's a bit of a long story.
That's what I'm here for.
Okay. Growing up, we always had animals around the house, from goldfish, turtles, cats, dogs. Because my grandfather was a deep sea captain, he used to sail from Newfoundland to the Caribbean, to Brazil, to Portugal, and over to England, and then back under sail. Right. He always was bringing back exotic animals, so we frequently had not just cats and dogs, but we quite often had parrots and monkeys in the house. So I grew up with animals. We always had a dog, but we never really had any purebred dogs. So when my wife and I first got married, we decided we'd like a dog. So being an academic, I decided I should do some research on that. So we looked at a lot of breeds, but the 3 breeds we kind of focused mostly on were Siberians because they're such a beautiful breed. I've always had an affection for bull terriers, so we looked at bull terriers, and of course Labradors. So we went to a friend in Newfoundland, and she had 2 Labradors, and one of them was a dog from England, a yellow dog, who was just an absolutely wonderful dog. He wasn't the best type, but he had a beautiful temperament. So we kind of fell in love with the breed. And we were going to have kids, so we really wanted to have a dog that was good with children. So I did everything right. I did all the research. I got recommendations from people. We brought a dog in from England, and I didn't know much about Labradors, but when I looked at him coming out of the crate, you could just say, "Oh my God, what a beautiful dog!"
Wow.
So we did that. All the rules you say follow, we followed. 6 months later, the dog couldn't walk. We didn't know what was the matter with it. We were novices. Brought him to the vet. He basically had no hip joints. Now, this was back in the 70s, early 70s. So we said, what can you do? Basically, the vet at that point in time said, you have to keep him in a cage for like a year and a half or something. We'd have to do both hips. And I said, that's just inhuman to do that to the dog. So he said the only other thing you can have is have him put down. So we had the dog put down. It was a really traumatic experience. So I'm always very conscious of our responsibilities as breeders. When we sell a lot of our pets, the dogs, as you know, to pet homes, we have an enormous responsibility, I think, to make sure that we're selling healthy dogs to these people. Anyway, I decided that if I was going to get into Labradors, I would do it the right way. So we took a year off with a 6-month-old kid, knowing nobody, went to England and lived there for a year. Visited every kennel all the kennels over there, all the old kennels, Glen Broadley, Sandy
That's
Lands.
commitment. That's cool.
Yeah. So it was fun anyway. So we went there and had a great time. Fell in with a really good group of people that were not dog related, but we visited, I think, every kennel in England. And Peggy Ray, who was Cornlands, had beautiful dogs, took us under our wing, under her wing. We took a lot. We had a number of pups that we looked at, got them X-rayed. They were all HD. So in those days in England, they weren't really doing very much with HD. They were really into PRA, but they thought if a dog wasn't limping, it didn't have HD. We finally got two really good dogs. Got them cleared, brought them back to Canada. One of them was a phenomenal obedience dog out of Ballyduff Kennel, Bridge of Docking. The other one was a dog out of Powhatan Kennel. One was yellow, one was black. The yellow dog was a phenomenal obedience dog, one of the best in show, but I don't think he had the best kind of type in the world. But he's the dog I love most of all the dogs I've ever had. The black dog had wonderful type, went to the States, finished with 5 majors. People kind of looked at him and said, well, we'd like to use that dog. One person actually came to Newfoundland to breed to the dog. And after that, we frequently went to the U.S. and showed during the summers.
Those are your first 2 dogs.
Those were my first 2 dogs.
Well, real, yeah. After your research,
and then we went from there. So we were very lucky in that we had some.
Well,
really
that's not luck. You took a year off and researched it, and then
yeah, there was a lot.
I think you had You had a hand in it, Michael.
Yeah. But we were lucky that we ran into some really good people there, and some really good people in the States. The person that came up to breed to the dog was a gentleman called George White, who bred and judged Labradors, but only Labradors did he judge. We became really good, close to him, like family. We were like part of their family. We're still very close to his daughter, Claire White Peterson, who breeds Labradors, is kind of known as Mrs. Chocolate in the U.S., I think. So we still have a great family relationship there. George was a great guy, great man, wonderful handler. If we really wanted to win at a dog show, George would handle our dogs for us, just as a friend. And then I'd take another dog that was not going to be handled nearly as well. So we were really lucky to have people like him help us out when we started.
Well, that's a good start, Doc.
Yeah.
Michael, I almost called you doctor again. You had those 2 dogs, and then obviously you started breeding after that. So.
Yeah, we started breeding. We went to we with somebody else bought a bitch over from Folly Tower. Folly Tower was another really well-known kennel at the time over there, and we bred and we got I think one of the best bitches we've ever had out of that. She won specialties in the U.S. She finished really fast. So we went on from there.
And did you show a lot of the dogs yourself then at that point?
Everything in Canada that I showed myself. In the U.S., George probably showed more of our dogs than I did. I was kind of like the backup handler down there. I mean, he knew everybody, and he was a way better handler than I was. That was for sure. So yeah, he was really kind to us. And as I say, it was just one friend helping out another friend in that case.
Very good. When did you decide, how long before into your breeding life did you decide you wanted to become a judge?
Well, I guess that was thrust upon me to a certain extent because we were fortunate that we made a name in the U.S. And people would ask me to judge at sanctioned matches, open shows, sweeps. And after a couple of times, I thought, wow, I really enjoy this. This is really great. So then I applied back here. First of all, I was an obedience judge. I did obedience first. And then I applied for half the sporting group. And from there on, I just really enjoyed what I did and just kept going until I finally got to the all breed.
What year did you start?
Wow. I think my first judging assignment my first permit might have been maybe in 70, 78, something like that, or somewhere around there, 78 or 80.
You were just a youngster.
Yeah, I was pretty young at that time, but I'm not so young right now.
Well, we've known each other for a long time. I probably mid 80s when I first met you. But yeah, I didn't know you've been judging that long, in the late 70s.
Yeah. Well, it's well into 50 years now that I'm pretty much 50 years that I've been judging.
Wow.
But I still love it. I mean, I love going to the shows. I love judging the dogs. I love that what we're doing is something that you never get to the end of. People said, like, well, why do you love judging? And then my reason is, part of the reason, is that you never get to the end. You can never say, I know everything. Every time you go out, you have something that you learn, something new that you see. You're always responsible for trying to better yourself. The late, great, beloved Skip Stanbridge did a seminar for us, and he said, he broke it down economically, and he said, these people are paying you pretty much close to $10 to $12 a minute to judge their dogs. So, $20 for 2 minutes. And it's your responsibility to make sure that you're giving them their money's worth. And as you can tell, I've never forgotten that. And I think you need to give the people their money's worth. So no matter if the dog is a horrible dog and you're not going to use it, that dog deserves its 2.5 minutes. And they also, I think, deserve a judge who is trying to do the best they can. We all make mistakes. I mean, every time I walk up from a show, I think, oh my God, why did I do that? And I'm sure most other judges do that too.
Well, we run a panel together in the fall in Calgary, and I'll tell you, I learned so much just watching you and learning. I watched you judge the one day, pretty well all of it, and I had judged the day before, I think. But I thought, like all these things clicked to me when I was watching you, so I was really happy you were there. So.
Yeah, well, I was happy that you were there watching it, actually, because that in a way made me even more to focus a little bit more on what I was doing, because I respect what you have done in dogs and your opinion on dogs, and there was a number of people around the ring, and you always think, oh my God, I got to do a good job here. Like it's like when you go to Westminster and there's 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 people around the ring, and they're all breeders and exhibitors, and you're thinking, my God, if I screw it up here, they're really going to say, what's this idiot? So that's a little bit of pressure. I think that makes us better.
Of course, I think so too.
Yeah, so I'm really, I love the judging. I love the challenges that it has. I hate the travel. The travel is just horrible, and it's getting worse. And
yeah, it's getting difficult.
Right now,
I'm new at it. I'm starting to feel the travel too. So
yeah, right now, I mean, I'm very selective about taking anything that requires a long trip. Mm-hmm. It really came home to me last summer when I did a show in Argentina. It was 24 hours airport to airport. One leg was 13 hours. I don't sleep on planes. So I was sitting there for 13 hours wondering, what the heck are you doing? So when I came home, I was so beat out. Because on the way home, I actually had to stop in Texas and didn't actually come home till after 4 shows in Texas. So by the time I got home, I was pretty worn out. So I said, yeah, let's be a little more sensible about those long shows. And basically, it's the travel. That's the only thing I dislike about judging, I think, is the travel.
Well, when you're popular, people want you, Michael.
Well, you can fool some of the people some of the time, I guess, but you fool all the people all of the time. Yeah.
So you mentioned Skip Stanbridge. Do you have, maybe he was one of your mentors in judging? Do you have other ones that were they might not even know they were your mentors?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Ginny Lyon was one of the people that I really that really helped me out, and I think she is the iconic judge in Canada, in my opinion, for the last couple of generations. I mean, she is a phenomenal judge, a phenomenal human being, but not only that, she's put a lot back into the sport. She mentors a lot of young judges. As an example, I was doing early on when I first started doing terriers. I was really unhappy with the job I did. And Ginny was on the panel. I was talking to Ginny about it. About a week later, I get this huge sheaf of papers with all kinds of information on all the terriers that she just sent me off. So I think Ginny was one of the people that I really respected and that I thought were people that were a person that was what you wanted to be when you were a judge. Another person that I really respect a lot is Ken McDermott, who you know. Ken is really knowledgeable. I think he probably still is. He's not judging anymore, but he still is the terrier man of North America, as far as I'm concerned, maybe the world. And he is a person that does what he thinks is right. He's an honest judge. He puts up the dogs that he thinks are the right dogs, no matter what they have done or haven't done, or who's handling or them, or who is not handling them. So I really respect a lot of the things that Ken does. So I think more than anybody else, those are the two people that have really influenced me a lot.
Those are two iconic members of the Judging Academy, for sure. Yeah. And I got to see one of your one of your seminars when I was in Newfoundland, and you did a seminar on Labradors. And you are an educator, you are in the education world, right? You also are a basketball coach, aren't you?
Yes, and I have a fractured finger from playing basketball with my 15-year-old granddaughter. It says when you're 80, you don't go out playing with a 15-year-old.
So you don't coach anymore then?
No, I don't coach anymore. I coached in high school. I coached for assistant coached at university for a couple of years, but no, I don't coach anymore. But I still go to all my grandkids' games, and all my sons played college ball.
Oh wow!
So yeah, we're a big basketball family. So I really enjoy the game. It's a great game, great sport.
It really is. But as I was saying about the seminar, you were such a natural up there talking about Labradors. Obviously, you had so much information about the beginning of the Labradors. So this is obviously, you can tell that you're definitely your heart breed. But how did you compile all that information?
Well, again, I had the background to do a lot of research. It was, as you say, a breed that I began with and that I love dearly, that I'm very committed to. But another thing about the breed is that over the decades, it's been generally fallaciously thought that the Labrador is a British breed. You have to remember that.
This is the part I like. I'm glad you touched on this. Yeah, this is the part I like.
Well, I have to remember that. When England ruled the world, right? And any colony that they were in control of, everything in the colony belonged to them. It didn't matter if it was an antiquity in Egypt or a dog in Newfoundland. That was theirs. So, of course, everything they claimed was basically their British English. But the reality of it is, when you're back in the history, and not only what the people say, but the pictures that you come up with, you realize that when the dog was imported into England in the late 1800s, the dog had already developed as a breed. Generally, the idea was that the dog originated in Newfoundland and was developed in England. But again, if you look at the pictures of dogs that were brought into England, and you have to remember that the breed was recognized in England in 1903, where they were still importing dogs from Newfoundland in 1932, and not just anybody importing them, but people who were aristocrats, the people who actually really owned the breed in England and protected the breed. And all these breeders said, we've done everything we can to protect the breed, to keep our pedigrees as pure as we could. Were some things bred into the dog, into the lines? Yeah. They were, of course. But generally, they tried to keep the breed as pure as they could. And that's everybody that was over there breeding them then said that was what they were doing. And you have to remember, in England, the Labrador was a dog that was basically associated with the aristocracy. When the first wave of Labradors came over on the boats in the pool from Newfoundland, they were taken over by like regular people who were, just wanted a dog that they could use to get meat. And they bred it whatever they bred it with. But when the aristocrats saw what the dog could do and they took them into their kennels, then they kept the breed as pure as they could. And those are the dogs that the Labrador really developed from. And we were just, the breed was just lucky that there were these men who were dukes and lords and had a lot of money and a lot of power and a lot of wealth. And they kept that breed as pure as they could. So very fortunate, because the dog basically did die out, almost pretty much died out in Newfoundland, because the Newfoundland government had the idea that we're going to raise sheep in Newfoundland. Of course, like many government projects, that was a flop. But at the same time, they had put so heavy a tax on dogs, particularly dogs that had not been neutered, that there were basically no dogs left. So the last dog that was what we would call a pure water dog, that had nothing in Newfoundland, that had nothing at all bred into it, died in the early 80s, I believe. But if you look at that dog, I had some slides of him, as you remember.
Yeah.
That dog looks exactly like a Labrador. I mean, it is a Labrador, just never left the island. So basically, I think the reason I feel strongly about it, of course, is because Newfoundland is my ancestral home, as it is the dog's ancestral home. It's the breed that I love and that made whatever reputation I have in dogs. And it's a Canadian dog. I mean, it's some part of our heritage. I mean, all of these things are parts of our heritage. The Newfoundland dog, the Canadian Eskimo dog, the duck toller. I mean, those are part of Canadian heritage, and they've played a big, big part in our history. Dogs in Newfoundland were never used or thought of as pets for the longest time. They were thought of as ways to keep you alive. I mean, people in Newfoundland were very, very poor, and so a dog was a tool. And so the dogs basically did self-selection. It was Darwin at his strongest, right? They developed as they developed. So the breed was fortunate that they had protectors in England that protected the dog, and that's what the English have to be praised for, congratulated for, thanked for, that they kept the breed alive.
Right.
But they didn't develop it. And one of the great things for me, anyway, is that the Canadian government, or the Newfoundland government, just passed a members' bill that recognized the Labrador and the Newfoundland dog as indigenous breeds in Newfoundland. And believe it or not, every member of the House voted positively for that motion. So you can just imagine now that anything that comes up with politicians and they all vote, you can get everyone agreeing to vote on one thing. So dogs do bring people together.
They sure do.
So that's just been passed a couple of months ago. And a person that was very involved in that was Siobhan Cody. She and her husband, Pat, have some wonderful Labradors, and they're in Newfoundland. She also happens to be the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance. So we had a pretty powerful help with that. But she's doing a great job with dogs in Newfoundland. You saw some of her dogs at the seminar. And I mean, she's got dogs, a dog that's won Westminster twice now in the last 2 years, and was select dog at the Potomac, which is the great Labrador specialty. So she's doing really, really well, and she's helping other people in the province, working with other people in the province to keep the breed going there. So, yeah, another person that needs to have a lot of praise sent their way.
Sure does. When I was there, the breed ring I judged earlier that year too, but the breed ring, you'd be happy to have almost any one of them in your breed ring. It was incredible. So
Yeah, there's the entries. I was fortunate. I was asked to judge I guess the 100th anniversary show or something last year before last, and the dogs that were there weren't many, but the dogs that were there could and have competed anywhere in North America and do extremely well. So that's one. And unfortunately, the Newfoundland dogs are just the opposite. It's really, really difficult to find any Newfoundland dogs in Newfoundland right now, not just really great ones, but any ones. And that's what the early explorers in Newfoundland said. The hardest thing to find in Newfoundland is Newfoundland dog. And these little short-haired black things were running around everywhere. But nobody paid them any attention because they were just common dogs. What they really wanted was the Newfoundland dog, right? Mm. But they were hard to find in Newfoundland even back in colonial times.
Wow. I think we got a history lesson too. That's fabulous. We'll turn it back to dog shows. Now you've judged for 50 years now, almost, or close to it. You have some dogs in your history banks. Which ones really stamped you with certain breeds? Try not to talk about dogs that are being shown now, obviously, but dogs that you've seen over the years. You can even start off with Labradors, because you can talk about Labradors of the past. Which Labrador was stamped in your head?
Oh, wow. That's a difficult question because there are so many really good dogs that you see over the years. And unlike Ken McDermott, I don't have this kind of a photographic memory that can remember every dog. And
he was amazing, wasn't he?
And who the dog's grandparents were. So that was a kind of a tough one. There was a beautiful, beautiful bitch in England that I recall, in Labradors anyway. And she was owned by Peggy Ray Cornlands, and the name of the bitch was Cornlands My Fair Lady, and she held the record for bitches for a long time in England.
Did you get to judge her?
No, I didn't judge her, but I saw her because I had bought. I went up to Peggy Ray's, and she had a litter of puppies. So she said, she was a wonderful lady. She said, okay, here's this litter of puppies. Look at them and tell me. It was a big litter. It was about 12 puppies. And she said, look at these puppies now and see which ones, which one you might like. And so I said, sure. And I was total novice here, right? So I looked at the puppies, and she said, over here, when she had another little kennel, she said, these are the two puppies that I think are the two best ones. So she said, pick one of those puppies, and I'll keep one and you keep the other one. So whichever one you want, you can take. So it was a two yellow males. So I picked one of them. Beautiful puppy. Again, 6 months started to limp. Had him x-rayed, HD. Called up Peggy and said, told her what happened. She said, I'll get the other one x-rayed. If the x-ray is clear, he's yours. X-rayed, HD. But when I was up there, and I had to remember that I was in the breed for all of 1 year, and she said, I can't find anyone to breed to My Fair Lady. Like, who would you recommend? And I was like, you got to be kidding me, right? Well, I had no clue. But I did see the bitch, and I did go over the bitch, and she was to me, she was just a phenomenal, a really beautiful bitch that I thought a lot of.
Do you have any photos of her?
I don't have any photos, but there are, I'm sure, in all of a lot of the probably lab books and everything that they have. And she was a pretty outstanding bitch.
What dogs that you've judged over the years have made an impact on you that you can recall?
That's a problem. The problem is recalling them.
Ken McDermott, it's funny. Ken McDermott and Ken Murray both have phenomenal memories.
It's unbelievable. I mean, that like with me, someone will ask me 10 minutes after I come outside the ring, what did you think of this dog? And I went, what dog? and it's and I don't know that. I mean, seriously, I don't know the names of the dogs. I don't know half the names of the people. I can. I know, for example, in Staffy Bulls, which is another breed I really love. That I was in Australia, and I got this Staffy Bull Terrier, and I looked at it and I said, "Oh, mother of God, this is like just the most beautiful thing I've." And so I ended up giving him Best in Show, and he, for me, really stuck out in my mind as what a great Staffy would be, and that was kind of about just asking me what his name was. I have no clue. So yeah, don't ask me to name dogs.
But as long as they're stamped here, like I always, I haven't been judging as long as you, but I've seen a lot of dogs in my lifetime, so I have so many stamped in my head that I recall. Like I'll be going through, say, Irish setters, and I'll recognize a family of Irish setters in my head, and it goes back to a certain dog.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so, the image of the breed is stuck in my head, and then, as you'll find out as you go further and more along, but you've got a really big background in dogs. So you've already established a lot of these images in your head. But what I found was when I was going through that sometimes you get very comfortable, so comfortable with breeds, you can just hear the dogs walk into the ring and they go, oh, okay, this one, I've got to look at them. But the rest of them, well, I'm going to go over them because they deserve to be gone over and they deserve to be given every chance. But this is a dog that I looked at and I say, oh yeah, this is going to be one I have to really look at carefully because it's going to be competitive with this one over here, and it suits the standard very clearly. And then there's other breeds that you work on hard all the time. You're always working on those breeds and trying to make sure that you're actually doing the right thing. So over a long period of time, you get breeds that you have this image in your mind, and this image sticks there. And some other breeds, it's not as easy. And I think for people that come from breeds like Labradors or breeds that what you see is what you get, like a Doberman or a Rottie, that coated breeds can often be more difficult than short-coated breeds. You really have to get your hands on the coated breeds and really go over them really, really carefully because, I'm sure that somebody like Nigel or Bill who looked at a peak could tell, from 100 yards away whether that peak was a good peak or a great peak. But the rest of us have to really get in there and have a closer look at it.
I have to tell you, though, like over the years showing dogs, and someone asked me about certain judges, I did find that Labrador judges were good type judges overall, like in the sporting group.
Yeah.
I found, I don't know if it's because I think the Labrador there's different styles, obviously, but there's definite type that people say, oh, the black dogs have the yellow dog type. Well, there are different styles, those two colors. You might find a deeper type or more consistent type in the black dogs. But because of those variations and the chocolates, I have found over the years showing dogs that I enjoyed showing to Labrador judges because they seem to have a handle on type in other breeds they were judging.
Well, I think in Labradors, again, in flats or Goldens or Chessies, you can't, as examples, you get used to the solid color. So people say, how can you judge a ring of like 35 black bitches in Labradors? And it's just automatic. It's not something that I think, oh my God, they're all black, and what am I going to do? Whereas somebody that comes from pattern breeds, or when you get into pattern breeds, the pattern on a breed can make like split faces on smooth fox, right? You're wondering, people wonder, or that dogs has totally different markings on one side than on the other side. But I think perhaps for judges that come from solid colored breeds or breeds that have one pattern like a Rottie or a Dobe, that you're looking at a breed and you're looking for type. It's not just the color. You're not influenced so much perhaps by color or by markings. So you're looking at the outline. I mean, I think that's for every judge. I mean, I think when we first go into the ring, we look at the outline of the breed, and how does that outline fit the breed, or does the dog in there fit the outline? And so you look at the outlines, and then you start looking at the small details, and then you move them and hope to God that they can move, because as you know, you see a beautiful dog and you say, oh my God, standing still, this dog is just magnificent. And then the dog moves and it goes, and I'll raw everything, right? or you hope that the dog has teeth when you open the mouth, right? So I think that we get that idea. For the best way to become a good judge, in my opinion, is to judge. And that's a problem in Canada, I think, with people who are coming up as judges, that they don't get the opportunity to see a lot of dogs in a breed. And that is becoming a problem in the U.S. too, because as you probably noticed, some of the shows that were once 1,000 dogs are now 250 to 300 dogs. And so they're getting shows that they're not just handing out ribbons. So it's really important, I think, for young judges coming up to have the opportunity to see 35 Weimaraners or 40 Rotties or 25 Norwich. We don't have that opportunity in Canada, and now in the U.S. it's, as I said, getting to be that they're not. A lot of them are not going to not having the opportunity either. So. I don't know what we can do about that. It's just one of those things that is happening with the sport. And as you know, we're all kind of worried a little bit about the sport and where it's and how it's going to develop, how it's going to transition into the next generations. Because when you look around the dog show ring, you notice there's an awful lot of old people, not a heck of a lot of young people. And when I get to be one of the younger judges on a panel, I start to worry. Where's the judging community going to, right? So I think we need to do some serious thinking about how we can develop the sport, or we're not going to have a sport. Again, if you notice, a lot of the clubs are run by 2 or 3 people who are not very young,
right?
And after a while, the club just collapses, and that's happened to some of the really good clubs in Canada. And I'm talking to Charlie August in the US, and I mean he and his group are like I think there's like 3 or 4 people that run a series of really big shows, and Charlie is not not in the best of health. But if anything happens to these people like Charlie, then the show is going to collapse. So like he and Liz and I think maybe 1 or 2 others run a big circuit, and it's hard, particularly when you get to be 70, 75, and you just can't put in the same amount of energy that you have when you're 40 or 50 or you're really old. You're really old when you think of someone who's 50 as being young, right?
See, you naturally answered my next. You naturally answered my next question. I was going to ask you, if a young person came up to you and said they wanted to become a judge, what advice would you give them? But you kind of already answered it for me. Is there anything else you would expel upon to this person if they came to you and said? Because you did answer it, but there might be something else.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things is you can never get self-satisfied. You can never think that you know everything. I know when we started to introduce judges' education in Canada, and I was very involved with the CDJA. In fact, we set up the first Institute of Judges' Education in Toronto. The CDJA did that by itself and invited judges to it. A lot of the people who were older judges were very resistant to that. They thought, like, I've been an all-breed judge for 20, 25, whatever years, and none of these young people can tell me anything. But I think they were obviously very wrong. We've got some young breeders who were phenomenal and are doing wonderful things, and they might be 30 or 35 or 40, and they know a tremendous amount about about their breeds and about other breeds, but particularly about their own breed. But so I think one of the things is we never should become complacent and think that we know everything or that we know even most of it. I think the other thing is that you go to people and you listen to what other people have to say, and then you can make a decision on whether this is something you want to incorporate into your judging or not. But I think you have to be open to listening to people and to what they believe and what they think the breed should be. I mean, there's a lot of people that I know in Labradors who are good friends and who have a very different opinion about Labradors than I do. And I'm sure that's true of every breed.
Sure.
As an example, I was judging in Finland, and a person who was a good friend, and asked me to judge the Labrador specially. And I had two dogs at the end of the day, and I picked one. One had a head I just couldn't live with. And afterwards, I said she asked me what was my decision on the between the two dogs. And I said, well, I mean, the one that I didn't use, I couldn't, the head was horrible. She said, I judged that dog a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it had a wonderful head. Now, this was a Labrador breeder who was, very experienced. Yes. So, you get that, people who will disagree on a breed. So just because somebody said something doesn't necessarily mean that you have to incorporate it into what you think. But I think you have to listen and see if you could possibly be wrong. The other thing I think that we have to do is, as I already mentioned, is make sure that you take advantage of as many educational opportunities as you have available to you, and not just look for a piece of paper or a certificate that says, you've attended this, but to actually try to learn. And I think the other thing is you have to judge. You have to get out. If someone offers you to do a owner handled in the U.S. or to do baby puppy or to do any show in the middle of nowhere, you have to think, I should go. I should take that opportunity to find out about the dogs that I'm going to be judging. Because again, I think, as we talked about at seminar in Newfoundland, that judges have a responsibility to educate themselves and to do the best job that they can possibly do. So that sounds kind of like preaching, doesn't it? No, and I think that's really important for young judges coming up. And I think the other thing is to recognize that. There's a famous quote in English literature from Leonard Woolf that says that the journey, not the arrival, matters. And I think it's the journey, becoming a judge, that's what's important, what you learn along the way, not to become suddenly 3 groups, 4 groups, 5 groups, all great. It's to go and learn what you can and everything you can learn. And when you're satisfied that you know what you're doing, then go on. It's not a race to the finish.
Right.
It's not get all breed and then that's it. I don't have to do anything else. I've reached the pinnacle. So I think that's another thing. And we all want to finish whatever we start, right? If you're doing a test, you want to get to the end of it. If you're running a race, you want to run, get to the end, see what happens and win. But I don't think that's a mentality that you can have if you're judging. I think you can't say, I just want this. You've got to say, well, I want to progress and learn what I need to learn so that I can be good at what I'm doing. So I think that's one of the biggest problems, and that I think a lot of young judges, and I know that I was like that myself, feel rushed. I have to do this. If I don't do this in a certain amount of time, if I don't do this quickly, then I mustn't be a good judge, or I'm not doing what everyone else is doing. So sometimes people have to slow themselves down. If someone asks you to, I can remember, again, anecdotally, right? And I don't hold myself up as any kind of model for this, but I was doing a Labrador show early in my career, and in in California. And somebody came up to me afterwards and said, "I liked what you did in Labradors." And I said, "Thank you very much." And she said, "Well, I would like you to judge for our club." And I said, "That'd be wonderful. What's your club?" And he said, "Well, it's a poodle specialty." And I said, "No, thank you. I don't feel that I could." I was licensed for poodles, but I didn't think I could do a poodle specialty in the U.S. with maybe 100, 200 poodles. I just didn't have the experience. I said, "I can give you some names of people that I think would do an excellent job for you if you wanted someone who would do that." But I think people, is again not holding myself up as any kind of a model, but I think people have to realize their limitations. So if someone says, "Yeah, let's come and judge 400 of these dogs," and you said, "Well, I've only seen 2 in my life, but I'll go and do it," you're going to get into a hell of a lot of trouble.
Right. Wow. So it sort of brings me next. How do you feel about our judging process to become a judge up here in Canada, compared to other kennel clubs you've been working with?
Well, we're always kind of held up, I guess, compared to anyway the American system and American judges. My opinion is that we have great judges in Canada and we have bad judges in Canada, and Americans have great judges and they have bad judges. So it's not something that's a kind of a national characteristic. Because of the situation that we're in Canada, I mean, we're the second biggest country in the world. We have the second biggest land mass, and yet we have about 37 million people. I think, California and New York State have more people than we have. So you have this huge expense. So you have to say, either we're going to have a number of people who can do all breed judges, who can act as all breed judges, because a lot of the shows are less than 175, particularly when you get into far, far rural areas.
Right.
So you either tell those people that you can't have a dog show because they can't afford to bring in 3 or 4 or 5 judges who can only do a group or a group and a half each, or you have to supply them with judges. The U.S. is different. I mean, I believe that if you have 3 to 4 groups in the U.S., you can judge every weekend if you want. It's a different situation. We need up here. We need judges who can cover a lot of breeds, or we need to tell clubs that they can't have shows, and then the sport will die up here. So our process is faster than the U.S., no question about it. Do people go through too fast? Yes, I think we do. But if people are dedicated and really want to be good judges, I think that we have some examples of people who have gone through the Canadian system and have become exemplary judges. I've been working with the Events Officiating Committee, which, as you know, is the committee with Canadian Kennel Club that looks at all the rules governing judges for all of the disciplines. But looking at confirmation in particular, I think we need to make the process more challenging, which is going to slow people down, which is going to raise a lot of hackles, get people pretty upset about what's going on. But I think that it's necessary. We have to try to get people to see the breeds more clearly, to understand the breeds, to know what's essential about the breed, about any breed. At the same time, I think we really have to help people who are becoming judges to get that opportunity, to get the education opportunities, to get the judging opportunities. So do we have problems in the Canadian Kennel Club system? Yes, there's problems that, every club has. In England, as you know, most of the judges are breed judges. They judge one breed. But when I lived in England and when I showed over there, everybody knew that Gwen Broadley had a bitch that just had 2 cc's and needed another cc. Everybody knew what dogs were winning and what was going on. So some pundits said when they took off the rabies, when they allowed the dogs to come into England after the rabies situation was kind of resolved, that half the judges in England would have to turn in their license because they didn't know the dogs. They just knew who. They just knew who was who. Now, I didn't say that. I want you to point out. I'm just saying that some pundit said that. Whether it was true or not, I don't know. But obviously, that person thought that England had a judging problem too. And if you talk to a lot of American judges, I think you'll find out that they feel that they have some judging problems. So, yeah, we have judging problems in Canada, and I think we're trying to resolve them. I think the CKC and committees like EOC and CDJA are providing opportunities for people to become better judges. But people have to take that opportunity.
Right. It's up to the individual. I honestly believe that if they want to learn, there's ways for them to learn. So we have what we call our box checkers, and others that actually want to advance. So.
Right. And I mean, it's someone wrote in to EOC talking about how are we going to make sure that people who do online seminars, for example, are actually at the seminar.
Right.
So somebody will, be there, turn on their iPad and have the seminar running, but they're off, watching the hockey game or the basketball game. No names intended here, Will. But sometimes the Celtics are running that. But yeah, you have to, I mean, obviously you have to take advantage of it. If it's just as you say, checking boxes, you're not going to learn anything.
Right.
And it's a learning process.
And if you don't learn anything, it does come out in the wash eventually. You'll find yourself in the middle of that ring with going.
Yeah, I'm like, I can still do that. Get in the middle of the ring and I'm like, God, what am I doing here, right? But I mean, I knew a real a good young judge who could have gone on to become a really good judge, and took an assignment that he should never have taken, and ended up in the ring. Judge that knew a couple of breeds in the group that he had applied for, but didn't know any of the other breeds. And when he got into the nitty-gritty, he just absolutely screwed up. And a lot of people started complaining about it. And he became so upset that he just stopped. He just didn't want to go anymore. And he never did become the good judge that he really could have been. Mm-hmm. So again, you have to know yourself, and you have to know what you can do and what your limitations are. But it's important that people get the opportunity, but then they have to realize that this opportunity is, in a sense, a kind of like a two-edged sword, that they have to know what they're doing, because if they don't, then it's really going to be detrimental, not only to their career, but I think to their own concept of self. I mean, it must be horrible to stand in the middle of a ring and think, I know nothing about any of these dogs. Right?
Yeah, it's true, Doc. So where are you going next? Anywhere? Because you're always busy. So are you taking a break, or you already have something on the horizon?
Oh, I've got a few shows coming up. The next one is going to be out in Washington State. I'm doing a show out there, and then I'm doing Woodstock.
Well, that'll be fun.
That should be fun. I have to go back to the 60s and get out my tie-dyes. So I've got some shows in Canada. I'm doing some specialties in that, and the lab specialty, and been asked to do the American National Labrador specialty again. I'm doing some shows in New Orleans and in Jersey. So yeah, it's just as busy as I want to be. Let's put it that way.
I've always taken you as this. You're such a modest guy, but yeah, Mr. Michael, you are one of our role models. I'm sorry to tell you. So it's just the way it is.
That's kind of a frightening responsibility. I can name you someone that I think are better role models.
Well, that's a different perspective, though. See, we're looking at our perspective. Like, I would never say I was a role model as a hockey player. I was never, although I'd love to have been.
I would have liked to have done that basketball too, for sure. My dream was always the dunk. White men can't jump. That is true in my case.
But I've always enjoyed watching you judge, and when you're on a panel, I look forward to that panel. It's always been that way. So
Thank you.
you
Will.
are a role model.
Thank you.
And I try not to call you doctor because you always get upset, but you are a doctor. So.
Yeah, well, it's something that I use when I was working, that you use at work all the time, right? But generally in just everyday situations, it's not something that I want. So
I'll try my best just to call you Michael.
Hey, you, it's good. No, thank you. Well, those are very kind words indeed. And as you get near the end of your career, it's kind of nice to know that people that you respect think that you've done a pretty good job. And so when say people like Ginny think that you've done good, that's important. And you feel like that. And as you said, I've been very fortunate in that I've had some wonderful people that have helped me along in the process, and even in obedience. When I started obedience, the person that mentored me was John Blinky, and I think John Blinky was like as far as I know, the Labrador or the obedience authority in Canada. And so, as I said, I was really so fortunate to get all these people who said, "Yeah, sure, we'll help you out," and who kind of kept in touch. Like Ginny and I are still working together on the events officiating committee, and Skip, as I say, Skip was a dramatic loss to the dog show, and I loved him. He was and I think everybody loved him, actually, because if you look at that, remember the little one thing they used to have in Canada, of all the butt judges that are no longer with us, would you like to ask for dinner? And if you ever look at that, I think about 70% of the people who wrote into that always said Skip Sandbridge. He was such a phenomenal character, but he was. I mean, he was a humble man too, and a very funny man. I was glad that he was consider him a friend. He was great, and I still keep in contact with Ken, and right back and forth. And that was a scary experience, by the way. Judging Chariers and Ken McDermott sitting by the side of your ring.
Oh, I bet.
I think, oh my God, this man knows more. Knows more than I would ever dream of knowing about Terriers. Right? So it's been a great road for me. I'm really happy that I got involved in dogs. It changed my life. I've done things and met people and seen places that I never would have seen or done.
We're all happy you got involved in dogs as well. So.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm very pleased that at the end, as I say, getting near the end of my career, that people think that you've done a good job.
Well, thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Michael. I won't keep you any longer, and I appreciate your time. And I'm sure I'll see you somewhere.
I hope so. Yeah, it'll be. It's always a pleasure to see you, Will, and. Somewhere around the rings, we'll meet up and have a chat.
Exactly.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you, Michael. I knew that was great, and I honestly believe what I told you. You are a role model to us all, and thanks for doing this for us. If you like what you're seeing here, press the like, share, and subscribe button, and don't forget about the podcast, The Dog Show Drive with myself and Wayne Kavanaugh, and I will see you down the road.